Hey guys, how you doing? Um, Adam Harrington's episode was one of the first ones we filmed, and so I was still working through some technical difficulties. God bless Adam, but I got the whole audio, so we're good there. But the last 15 minutes of video, Adam drops out. Just FYI, if you're watching this. Otherwise, if you're listening, you're gonna hear a lot and learn a lot. All right, guys, thank you and welcome.
Thanks, man. So we were talking about names, and I just thought it was fascinating that Gabe Greer was on here yesterday, and he goes by William Gabriel Greer or Gabe Greer. And my friend Jessica was on, and she at one point was Jessica Blythe to whitewash her name. So everybody's got a bit of a name history. So thank you for sharing. Have you ever gone by AJ?
No, when I was a baby, my dad called me AJ, but it just never. And no one I know, when they look at me, they're like, "Yeah, you're not an AJ. You just."
I agree.
Because I thought AJ Harrington would that be sort of cool, but everyone's like, "Yeah, no, you're not an AJ."
It's fun. Harrington's great for you.
That's heavy, man. That's a lot of block letters. I remember it took the longest time. Speaking of names, it took the longest time for me to figure out how to do an autograph correctly, because Adam J. Harrington, that's a lot of swirls, and I'm a lefty, right? So you're pushing, you're always pushing the Sharpie through the ink and on your hand. And I've only ever gone to one. I've only ever gone to one. I don't know what you call them. It was for Supernatural, a convention, and it was in England, and I was so naive that I didn't realize that when you're sitting down doing the signings, the autograph signings, that you're making money, like for every autograph. And I had no idea. I thought you paid your flat fee. I didn't know anything about conventions. I didn't ask any questions, and I should have. So there's this lineup, and me being, the nice Canadian, I'm just trying to get through people so that they can all get their autograph, because I thought that it was included in the price. And it was, I realize now looking back, it was so embarrassing, but people were posting my autograph on Twitter afterwards. I'm going right in the face right now with the comment of, I paid $10 for this, and it was this chicken scratch. And I felt so bad. I'm tweeting people back, oh my God, I can send you another one. No, it's okay. We were just kind of making fun. But I learned a valuable lesson that circles and arcs and flowy stuff, even if it looks like gibberish, because some people do signatures where it's just a bunch of circles, it is more aesthetically pleasing than straight lines and angles. It just looks more relaxed, and it's more open than something that literally looks like chicken scratch. So I had to learn how to figure out how to make that Harrington work in an autograph, because I felt so bad. I was never. Needless to say, I think there was many reasons, but I was never invited back. Like, I slept in one morning, and I was being like, I was a monk. I wasn't going out. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing anything. And of course, it was in England, and the time change just killed me. The jet lag, and I slept in, and it was a whole.
My God!
Never got him.
You're so professional and dialed in, so I imagine that was pretty stressful for you.
Yeah, and it was. I didn't know what I was doing. They're all very gracious, but yeah. But
so when you work
yeah. I was just going to say.
I was going to ask about Supernatural just really quick. Yeah, you finish yours, and
I was just going to say it's interesting with the name thing. I think more people these days have variations of their own names versus Hollywood when it, first came to be, where nobody had their real name. Everybody got whitewashed. Everybody had a fake name that would sound like a star's name. And I think it's wonderful that we're getting away from it.
Yeah, maybe whitewashing's the wrong term.
No, I think back then there was a lot of whitewashing. Everybody's names got whitewashed into this kind of very neutral sounding, or maybe not neutral, but slightly Irish, Scottish, white.
Yeah, easy to remember.
Totally. Short, not Jewish at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to ask?
So, you did Supernatural.
I did
Did
for a hot second.
My buddy Mark Pellegrino was on that.
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
happen to work together at the same time?
No, but I met Mark at the convention. He was very cool. He was so smooth. He knew it inside and out. It was like watching a magician at work. He was just so good at working with people. And yeah, but no, I never worked with him personally. I was in for they brought me in as a new villain, and then I think quickly realized, or it was just supposed to be a little bit of a space. It was just supposed to be to bridge a gap. So I think I came in and did two episodes. Came in, was villainous, and they killed me. Yeah.
Hey, but you were on Supernatural, one of the longest running shows ever.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, or I am.
Okay.
I like to start at the beginning. So you're from Canada.
I am from the Canada.
Can you tell me a little bit?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you found your way to film and acting?
Yeah, everything north of the border is just a mystery. We don't talk about it. We don't want anyone to know about how much we don't want anyone to know how much water we have and natural resources. So I was born in Canada near Toronto, about an hour west of there, in a little town. Well, not a little town, but it was a steel town, which is if you watch the series The Mayor of Kingstown, the exterior shots that they use as the prison town and the blue collarness and the steel factories, that was the town I was born in. So very, very blue collar.
No shit, the actual.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was watching the opening credits and I'm like, wait a second, there's a high level bridge they show, and I actually worked on a survey crew in the muck, digging surveying the footings for one of the sections of that thing, and we had to actually get typhoid. We had to get inoculated against two things because it was so the ground was so contaminated. But so I recognized that, and I'm like, that looks like Stelco and Dofasco, and I looked it up, and it was like, yeah, all the exteriors are that Hamilton, Ontario. So anyway, I know born
Brampton.
There. You know Brampton. So I was born there, grew up in that area. Great area at the time. My parents' house was on a dead end street, and there was all marshland around there, and I was just an outdoors junkie. So I was just out there all the time with the frogs and the tadpoles and birds, and that whole area of the country is all produce farming. So for me, it was normal that I thought everybody had a John Deere dealership in their town, an International Harvester, and all that stuff. Yeah. So grew up there, really got into, the outdoors. And then when it came time for school after high school, my parents were very insistent that you have an education that can get you a job, like a real job. Acting was television and Entertainment Tonight, but there was no access to it. So I got into scuba diving when I was 16.
You were interested at this point?
Oh, looking back, I was interested right out of the gate. Like I would be watching all the entertainment programs. I had my grandfather's 8-track reel-to-reel, and I would be taping John Williams and the Boston Pops off the television so I could listen to it.
Wow.
Like all that stuff. I remember Raiders of the Lost Ark blew my mind. West Side Story blew my mind. But it just wasn't. And I did one play in high school, and of course my grades tanked when I did the play, so I wasn't allowed to do another play. And in that time, there was no real schools to go to. There was some schools, but nothing like New York or London. Like I look back even now at that age, and I was like, that was the fantasy. But I also love the outdoors. I love being around the water. I love scuba diving, and there was a really good college nearby that had a marine biology program, even though it was landlocked. So I went through school for marine biology, and then did a master's degree in cell membrane physiology, and then worked in my field a bit. I was running diving programs for the undergraduates. I was health and safety diving officer for the zoology department. And you kind of get on that path. Yeah. you kind of get on that path, and that's the world you know, and that's the world you're in. And so anyway, this all does make sense. So that took me out west because I got a job as curator of an aquarium off the coast of Vancouver on an island. So that took me out west.
Wow.
And and then I did that. It was
How old were you at this point?
I was 27, 28. I think it was 27.
Whoa. That's rad.
Or 25. 25, 26, something in that range. So it was a 4-month contract to improve all the health and safety conditions at this little aquarium and dealing with school kids and programs. But it was the first job I'd worked out of the university environment, where it was private sector. And I saw the reality of, I think 2 things happened. One is I got out of that university bubble. And 2, I saw the practicality of what being a marine biologist was like in the real world. And my sister, who's a very famous scientist and works in cancer research and aging, she had done her PhD and gone that route. So I saw what that looked like. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't have the brain for that. So I was working on this island. My contract finished up, and I thought it's now or never. If there's anything I've wanted to do, it better be now. Anything else I wanted to do, because it's, I'm getting, at that point, I thought I'm getting a little long in the tooth to be making changes. So I thought the only thing I'd ever wanted to try was acting. And I'd done some dabbled here and there when I finished my master's. I was working in a gravel pit for a while and driving into Toronto and taking acting classes, but I wouldn't tell my parents. So I packed up everything. I moved to the city of Vancouver because I knew there was an acting industry there. Packed up my scuba gear. I'd been diving every day. Got a job at a bar, which was very humbling because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I thought, I got a master's degree. I'm so smart, and got my ass handed to me right away. And started from scratch. Really started from scratch. Yeah,
that's so brave of you, man.
Yeah, it didn't feel brave at the time. It really felt like, I felt like I didn't have a choice. Well, I either thought I'm going to stay in marine biology and my soul is slowly going to die. And I'm going to be a very unhappy. I projected forward and I thought I'm going to be a really miserable 50-year-old man, really miserable. Or I can try going this way. So, because I had friends that asked me afterwards, they're all very sweet. Like, I went back to my college and all these like guitar players are like, oh, I wish I'd gone into music, but I didn't. And I wish I'd done that. So it was very supportive, but I don't feel I had a choice. I feel like I could either have a chance to really live and be happy, or follow this path, be safe, but watch my soul slowly die. That's what it really felt like, to be honest. So it was heavy. And there was a bunch of stuff going on at the time. My grandfather passed away, and, he'd worked in a factory his whole life, and he got a gold watch that was tarnished in 6 months. And I thought, there's no job guarantee anymore. Like, and I could have made more working at Starbucks than I was at the aquarium, because it was kind of like a passion project. So all these things were up in the air, saying to me, look, it's low risk. Like, there's no job guarantee anymore. There's no 25 years in a plant and they'll take care of you and you retire and stuff. Everything was so up in the air. So I did it. I did it.
Good for you. I'm so glad you did.
So am I. Thank you. Thank you.
And how were your folks' support in that? Because you were in your mid-20s.
I was pushing.
I heard you say, you were hiding it, and I experienced that too. Like, in my early 30s, I was still hiding things from my parents. So I'm like, I'm a goddamn adult. But it's funny how that stuff sticks with you longer than you'd think.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm curious what your experience was like.
Well, I wrote them. This was pre-internet. I wrote them and said, basically, I've forsaken 8 years of university to pursue a career as an actor. Was the gist of the letter or the phone call. And I think the response was, you can come home. Because they didn't know how to
Yeah,
I
they
think
didn't
for
know how to
them,
respond.
they grew up, they lived 20 minutes from where their parents lived, and their parents lived 20 minutes from where their parents lived. And it was just, so they were worried, but supportive. And then the first time I came home after that, they just said, you just seem really happy. You just seem really happy with what you're doing. And then they jumped right on the bandwagon, and they've been they were unbelievable ever since then. They were just worried. And for them, it's so sweet that they'll then jump on my bandwagon because I did take the chance to do it. And it's funny, you think, because I hear what you're saying, the old recordings of what they told you was, don't do this, it will fail. But what they're trying to say is, from my life experience, there's such risk there.
That's right.
I'm afraid for you. But I think what you hear as a young person, unfortunately, is who you are and what you want to do is wrong. Don't trust your own instincts. Your instincts will betray you and hurt you. Unfortunately, that's how a young person interprets it. So I get what you're saying about turning 30 and being like, I'm a grown man. Why am I doubting myself? Because the way a child sometimes internalizes advice is, oh my God, I shouldn't even trust what I'm saying because
that's right.
Like, I have terrible thoughts. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me because this action I want to make is going to be terrible. So I can't even trust my own instincts. So when I made the decision, I went through a very long phase where down was up, stop was go, don't was do, illegal became legal. Yeah.
I've been exploring that subject myself, if you really consider it, at the earliest age, we're kind of taught that our own impulses aren't correct.
Yeah.
So it's like, you go to put a fork in the outlet as a kid and you're, no! And all of a sudden you're like, oh. And so it begins there. And I don't think people realize, obviously there's safety in play there and there's education, but what that can do for you long term.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you found your way out of it.
Yeah. I think it's also a very fine line, because giving a young person whose brain isn't finished developing, empowering them to say, everything you want to think is great, do whatever you want to do, I don't think is also a smart thing to do, because you're dealing with brains that aren't done. And I don't necessarily believe that empowering somebody when they're still figuring things out, it's tough, especially if you are thinking about art and all that as a career. There's method to the madness, saying, oh, I'm going to keep saying no, because if you want it that bad, you will continue to go after it, and that drive and ambition that you have to have, or this line of work, will destroy you. So if you're sitting there, Timmy at 7 years old, and you bang a drum once, but you have no rhythm, and you're like, I want to be a drummer, and you're like, yay, good Timmy, but they have no rhythm, that's not particularly helpful either.
Agreed. It's an interesting quandary for sure.
Yeah.
It's almost like no one gets out alive.
No.
That was a childhood thing.
No childhood gets out alive, and no one gets through parenting alive.
Yeah. I love this exploration because it obviously helps my approach with character and the craft itself. So it's fun to explore that.
How does this relate to? I was going to say, how does this relate to character and craft for you? That was a really cool statement.
Great question. I write as well, and so what I've started to realize is it gives me cleaner access to myself, more unbridled risk, because I feel secure in the knowledge of myself, where I'm like, oh, this is the type of person who fill in the blank. And this type of person is that way because fill in the blank. And now I have not only because I learn two ways. Personally, I learn intellectually, but I've noticed intellect is like a sieve. It might not stick in the bucket, but once it's in my body, it's there forever. And I knew, like, back in the day, early days with this, I would like intellectualize the history, and it wouldn't stick. But now that I've sort of really explored this through the lens of my own experience, it's sticking. And so when I actually bring this over to writing or acting, it's present, and it's not just hot talk. Look, I did what Viola Davis did, and I did 10 pages about. I used to do that when I was 23, and it meant nothing. Yeah, I'm glad I did it, so I could know that it meant nothing, and then explore further. But that's kind of how it's been showing up for me. It kind of lends me to bring the universal human element to everything I do. And so, yeah.
I have you reminded me, there's a great Stella Adler quote, because you were talking about intellectualizing stuff, but it not sticking or anything. And she has a quote that says, "Until a fact passes through your imagination, it is a lie."
Oh. Until a fact. I mean, man, she's one of the best educators we have, huh?
Yeah. But I thought that's another interesting way of saying I can intellectualize something, but until I actually take it in, it doesn't stick. And Sean, you're such a talented person. I know you don't lie well in your art. That it won't stick.
Thank you.
It has to feel like a truth or something that you've attached your own access to.
Yeah, thank you. And something that helped me with that, I don't want to call it a problem, but that this thing I've been heading towards artistically, when I was taking Jeff Goldblum's class, he mentioned when you're preparing a part, it's like almost smoothing out a sidewalk. And every time you get a piece, you can walk smoothly forward through the part. And because he said the deeper you get into that, the cracks will stick out more, like the inauthentic moments, and you'll trip. And I just love that kind of visualization of a part being like a smooth road or a sidewalk. And the more you bring it to honest integration, the smoother the walk can be. The more you can run, the more you can play. So that's how it occurs to me as well. Like, you've helped me with so many auditions, and in class, and we've acted together, and you've definitely seen, like, I can't do inauthentic well. And I just mean when it doesn't resonate to me. It's like, it's apparent. And so I'm happy for that, even when it's annoying and frustrating. And
it is a gift,
humbling.
Yeah, it's a gift, but it makes you work harder.
Yeah, everything cuts both ways,
Yeah.
Like every gift has its other side. Like every sword is double-edged, I've learned. Nothing's for free. So I appreciate your answer on that. So you're in Canada. It sounded like,
in Canada,
if I'm picking up context clue, 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years acting, and then move.
Then the move. So 10 years acting, got a bartending job, realized I'd never taken an acting class, tried to pick up acting classes, doing little short films for the film school that was in town, anything I could do to play catch up, which I think the way I was trained in university was a very practical education you got taught there. And it was, how do you take a goal and then execute the project? And I, without realizing it, brought that into acting. So I just kind of treated it like school, started to get some gigs, got going. And then, in 2007, I moved. I decided I either needed to try and fail in the deep end rather than not try at all. So moved to LA in 2007. The writers went on strike. Then the economy crashed. So it was a very relaxing very easy beginning because nothing happened for a couple of years. It was just dead.
Mm.
And then I slowly started from there.
So I moved out here in 2008.
Yeah.
Your experience was you moved here and you just said like the three major catastrophes. Was your awareness like, it doesn't matter, I'm sticking it out, it's par for the course of life? Or was it like, oh fuck, I gotta move back?
Yeah. It was because I moved here at 39. And I very quickly became aware, and I'd been told in Canada, one of my agents was like, "Are you crazy? Don't move. You got momentum here, yada, yada, yada." And that didn't interest me. I was like, "No, it'll be fine." Yeah. And I moved here and quickly was shown in a variety of ways that I was about 15 years late to have a career in a different way. You know, that a lot of people are arriving when they're 15, 16, 20. And by the time they've hit their stride, they've got, 5, 6, 7 years of testing for pilots and for the town and producers to become comfortable with who they are and the ability to take a risk. And they've learned all the stuff that arriving at 39 was like, I fell on my face a lot. And then the economy crashed. And what usually happened is that you move to LA, but as a Canadian, they just fly you right back to Vancouver or Toronto to work on productions there. Like you audition in LA, but you can work as a local hire, so they bring you back. But because of the economy crashed, they weren't doing that. They were only using local hires. So I'm now living in Los Angeles, trying to get my green card, realizing I won't be going back to Canada to work, but I haven't established myself enough here to outcompete guys that were my age and had a really solid reputation with casting directors. And I think for the first year, a lot of it was kind of like, which a lot of people experience when they move here. I'm not sure if it was yours, but hi, it's very nice to meet you. We'll see if you're here in a year. Like, unless you're just walking through the door with that thing, they're like, great, nice to meet you. But I got a line of 10 other guys that I trust and I've seen a million times that are going to get the job before you do. But we'll see if you get back on the bus and go home or not. And that was kind of my path.
That's right.
Plus, I made a lot of naive mistakes.
People don't understand that, like, that the trust. You use the word trust a few times, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah. You just, like, several people have to trust you to get a part. Like, casting has to trust that you're going to be on set and not get starstruck when it's your time to perform on a tight TV schedule. People don't talk about that, but that's exactly what they're looking to do, is build. And that's just one aspect of it. There's other aspects of, like, are you going to even show up on time? Are you going to be sober? All these considerations.
I never even really understood I first moved here and everyone's like, I had a lot of shit I had to work through, but people like, just be confident, get confident, act confident. And for me, that wasn't my way in because I had no idea what that meant. It just, again, it was like, just lie, just be. And it took me a long time to realize what you were saying, with self-tapes, it's different. But, the entrance, the audition, and the exit are all equally important parts. And I used to think it was because you got to come in, you got to be sexy. Like I used to get, just be sexy, and then exit, be sexy. And I realized that what they're trying to do is they want to meet you and see what your energy's like coming in the room, because they're like, I don't know who you are. Do I want you on set all day? Are you going to be crazy? Are you going to vomit? Are you sober? And then you do the acting. And then the exit is the same thing. Like, great, you've just done the acting, but are you the same guy that walked in the door? And I think sometimes with people, especially when they're doing character parts, they'll walk through the door, do the audition, and then oh my God, thank God, I'm so glad you liked it. And they just killed it for themselves. Mostly because of what you're saying, is because suddenly they're like, oh, well, you're not who you were when you read, but now you're somebody completely different, and you're acting relieved that you were able to act that. So how do I trust? Which part of your audition was real, and which part was you pulling the bunny out of the hat? Like, which part did you have your fingers crossed? That. Yeah. And it's all
about that articulation of that.
Yeah. I remember I when I first moved here, and I didn't realize it, but it was a producer, and he said, "You want to know how this town works? Nobody wants to get fired." He said, "If I hire Steven Spielberg to direct my movie and put Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks in it, I won't get fired. If the movie tanks, it's going to be Spielberg's fault or Tom Cruise's fault or Tom Hanks's fault because they're already established names. But if you walk through the door as a guest star and you're a stranger, and I take a chance on you and you fuck up, that's going to reflect on me." He said, "So people don't want to get fired." And he said, "You got to remember
That's
that."
good business advice.
Yeah, but it took me forever to process it and understand it. But
yeah, how do you even apply that? You know, it's funny. I've booked jobs on the after, like the moment after the audition. And I know that because the director told me once. He's like, "Yeah, your acting's great." Like, duh. Right? Like, duh. Like, you're in the room. We obviously think you're a good actor. It was the edges around it.
Yeah.
Like the way you just handled yourself. There's
a lot of, with self-tapes that come along. I've heard it from a lot of actors and stuff about they can't book a room anymore. Like, they can't go in and win the room based on their personality and their ability to get a readjustment, that it's not just the acting, that oftentimes they booked because they came in and their personality, it's like, oh man, great guy, and so a great woman, and so solid and so professional, and I love them. And then the acting is it's not rocket science in TV. Most people can at least hit the ball, get you to second base. So but it was what they could, the trust that somebody had, or the they're going to be fun to have on set, or they made a little joke there, and I like their sense of humor, and or just they're just relaxed, they're ease with themselves and stuff. You can't do that with self tapes. Now it's all, we're all being judged based on how did you interpret the script, and if you made a good interpretation, but it's slightly different than somebody else, and we happen to be wanting the other version, well, they get it, not you, because we can't redirect you over Zoom.
I know. It's an interesting phase we're in, but
script analysis.
I'm trusting it's all going to work out. Yeah, we have to act now? So weird.
Not only do we have to act, but we got to turn in something that's filmable. Not just, here's my general idea of the scene, but I think the more casting is bringing us in, the more they see. I think the way there's a positive is that most agents, most managers, and casting, because it's so focused on the acting, if you're a good actor, you're getting noticed.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't have a problem with I wasn't auditioning a ton theatrically, but commercially it was all the time. Not the same stakes, so to speak, but I was definitely in the room a ton, and then I became self-tape, but I loved it. It was fun. It was just different. Just a different thing to overcome there. Yeah, all good. Let's pivot to surfing.
Okay.
So I grew up surfing.
Where did you grow up surfing?
I had San Diego, Imperial Beach, near the border. Yeah. And I had surf PE in high school. I surf sometimes 3 times a day. So for over a decade, and I wasn't any professional, but I definitely was a waterman. Can you
stamina, and your bones are rubber, and your skin is thick, and you can wipe out and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Oh my God, I've been in some hairy situations for sure. But I could probably connect the dots on how you got to surfing, but knowing you, I can see how important it is to you, or at least how much of a priority you make it. So you talk about that journey, and does it affect or help your craft? Like, do you surf before a big audition or a shoot? Does that enter your mind?
Like I said, I've always enjoyed being outdoors. Like, even growing up playing video games or watching sports or all that stuff, I couldn't. If I was sitting on a couch playing a video game, I didn't understand why I wasn't outside. If I was watching sports on television, I was just jealous of everybody getting to exercise and participate in the sport. I love live sports, but watching it on TV, I just don't understand why I'm sitting on a couch. So I was always outdoorsy. Where I grew up, it was a lot of trip camping, they call it. So it's you in a canoe with my dad and 4 days into a park, and you're just carrying the canoe carrying the canoe from lake to lake and eating boil and bag food. But the thing that drew me to it was the canoeing. Yeah. But the thing that drew me was the water. I just always, water was very calming for me, very centering. I think I wasn't raised religious, but nature, when I'm out in nature, I imagine that that's what's like for people when they go to church. That when people commune with God in church, that's what I feel like when I'm out in nature, that I feel like I'm a part of something huge and a tiny thing at the same time. I feel connected to everything and tiny at the same time. And then, and even when I was 18 and stuff, there was a phase when Kelly Slater and all those guys were coming up. There's a great documentary called The Momentum Generation on HBO. So when that was coming up, where I was in my little landlocked town, well, actually in Lake Ontario, we were getting all the OP, all the, the California, it was the first wave of all the surf stuff. And I was super into it, but there was no surfing. So anyway, fast forward, I moved to California. I'm here. I start going occasionally. But then the pandemic hits and you couldn't do anything. You couldn't go outside. And the first thing that opened up was the beaches on the May long weekend in 2020. But you couldn't sit on the beach. You had to be doing something athletic. And at that point, I decided to kind of get serious about the surfing. And that's when I really started to go for it a lot. So now I probably go a couple times a week. I don't have a schedule about when I go before or after auditions. I just recognize when I'm itching to go. But like I went this morning and I'm just surrounded by there was just dolphins all around, spy hopping and surfing.
What time would you get up? 4 a.m.?
No, sometimes 5:30. This morning it was 6. But I kind of took my time. Yeah. But no, I've always been an adrenaline junkie sports. I've been rock climbing and mountain biking and canoe tripping. And then my sister's into it too. We went on 2 trips up to the Canadian Arctic on these 11 and 17 day canoe trips through the Arctic. So but it's very elemental and I need it and I really enjoy it. But man, the injuries, I cracked my face in Costa Rica. Sorry about that. Cracked my face in Costa Rica. I put 11 stitches in my foot. I tore my ribs.
Would you get caught by a fin or the reef?
The foot was a fin. I could feel the board coming down and it cut both feet, but one of them felt very squishy all of a sudden. And I came out and it was deep. And then the break in the face was the board hit the bottom, came back up, and the rail cracked me. So I was just black and blue all the way down here. And I had a small cut on my face, but it cracked the bone underneath.
Oh my God.
But
Recently?
Yeah. Not this past September, the September before.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah. It was a surf camp and it was the second day of 7 days. So I had stitches in my face and they said, don't go surfing for 5 days. So I'm at a surf camp where all you're watching is surf videos and everybody's going surfing. And it was a great exercise.
In Costa Rica too.
In Costa Rica. But it was a really good exercise because it kind of taught me that I'm trying to live life by an equation. Like I've done A and B, so life should give me C. I had to really deal with that because I was like, I'm here and fuck it, I paid my money. Why am I not saying why did I not? Who hates me? And I just realized it was all bullshit. It had nothing to do with that. I wasn't getting punished by God or the universe. So there was a lot of very slow meditative walking on the beach to get out of that.
Not a lot of people would have that perspective.
Well, I didn't either. I was forced into it. But, you're just such a
Yeah.
rage and throwing such a tantrum about, there was a lot going on, and just getting to that camp was the joy. And suddenly I'm not getting to do it. And just kind of letting it all go and realizing that, no, I wasn't, nobody owes me. I'm not owed this. Okay. So I got here, but I'm not owed anything. And, I was trying to go for a wave instead of taking it easy, and I got knocked on my ass. And, so that's surfing.
My therapist said something to me once. She said, life's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So when things like that happen, I'm like, maybe my life just got saved. Like maybe I was supposed to drown, and I just got saved because it kept me out of the water. And that's helped alleviate some of because everything you said about the A plus B equal, like I'm very structural in my approach to acting and life. So I can run up against personal friction when things don't go to plan. So fuck, man, that's a good one.
Yeah, I had a buddy, so I'm talking to him when it happens, and I'm like, smack the face. And he just paused, and he said, wow. Well, he said, whatever you want to call it, you just got a big slap in the face to stop and slow down and sit in whatever, this was, you were trying to not run from or avoid or whatever. So I did. It was actually 5 really cool days. And then, dude, the last afternoon, it still hits me. And then we can get off this topic. But so the last afternoon, they pulled the stitches out. I didn't know my face was cracked at that point. I was still bleeding. I was still spitting up blood, but down there, they didn't realize it, but the cut had healed. It was like the sky was red and gold yellow above it. To the north of us, it was dark purple with lightning bolts running horizontally across the sky, which meant that it wasn't going to hit the ground, so we were all okay. And I go out into the water, and it's me and a bunch of these French guys that were like pro surfers, and I got right into the rhythm with them, and they were giving me waves. Like I'm not that. I've just started surfing seriously 2 years ago. At my age, so I'm kind of, I can get up and stuff, but we're just doing this in this gorgeous sky. And I didn't have my phone with me on the beach, and I thought, I can't take pictures of this. This is just for me. So it's purple with lightning, and then there's this blood red sky with orange sunset above it, and then to the south, this giant dark green cloud comes through, right? And we're just out there just surfing, and it's pure bliss, and I'm like, this is just from my memory. I can't take a picture of this. It's not about that. This is just for me. And I just felt so blissfully happy that this was the end of that hellish week. And then this fucking lightning bolt comes out of this green cloud. It was just like a tree trunk, and just, this is miles to the south, but just nails the ground. And we all slowly paddle in. But it was, to this day, man, I just couldn't believe it. It was so beautiful. It was just so beautiful.
Oh, I bet.
And everybody's got
like the water.
Yeah. And sometimes I get amazed. Like, I'm thinking we're on this little blue ball in the middle of nowhere, and we have this. It's liquid air. Like it's this substance that's just so bizarre, but wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, that's me soapboxing.
No, it's great. My favorite, and I don't surf consistently anymore. And 10 years ago, my ego would never let me say this next statement. But I basically have like one of these soft top longboards from Costco. Yeah. And mind you, I had like a 3-board quiver, like 2 wetsuits, like I grew up doing it. Yeah. And I take that every few months in Venice, and I have a blast. Just
they're fun. They're so much fun.
Surf is just to pump the wave. That's it. Yeah. That's my favorite part is when you take off. I'm goofy foot. So when I go left and I see that perfect face that just is, it just keeps coming. And you're like, oh, that's not closing out in 2 seconds? Great. That's my favorite. Because that's the difference between a beach break and a reef. A lot of people don't know. A beach break's more prone to close out. But it's
and faster.
less dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, because it'll just shelf up. Whereas like a reef, there's channels, but then there's a fucking reef. I've surfed Pipeline, and man, North
Holy
Shore of
shit.
Oahu was. I surfed Sunset Beach at 17 feet. Like, 17, that's so specific. So it was in that range. But I just remember
Oh my God.
that's as close to God in a different way as I've ever been. The inside bowl of Sunset, I'm paddling and I look to my right and you hear the rocks being moved by I don't know if you're familiar with Sunset setup,
No.
but it's basically a big outside wave about half mile out. And then the inside's this nasty bowl that's almost like Chopu in Tahiti, where it breaks like with the water level of, and it's famous for just wrecking people. So we avoided that and went out, and I'll never forget that trip.
What a great
What a
great time at Disneyland Earth that you were like, oh yeah, so they're like, did you do the Pirates of the Caribbean ride? You're like, yeah, I did Sunset. Did you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah. If you're ever in New Zealand, they have one of the longest lifts in the world. So
Raglan.
Take your board.
I've surfed it.
That's right. Oh yeah. Did you get it good?
I was so crap at that point because I was a summer surfer, but I did rent a board and I did go out and I did surf Raglan. Yeah. Which was trippy because it was the day after in the movie Endless Summer. It was the same day they had been there. I think it was the day after Christmas or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, and then the surf camp I went to, one of the guys actually lectures there. One of the two kids from Endless Summer shapes boards and does talks and meets people at this surf camp. So it was just kind of really trippy. But yeah, I went when I was in New Zealand. I purposely went to Raglan to surf that.
Wow, I love that.
I know.
So we're at an hour. How are you doing on time?
I'm good on time. I just realized you got me doing motor mouth today, so I'll listen more.
Dude, this is what we're doing. This right here, everything's great. I don't give a shit. Like there's no objective. We're just talking, and already there's enough information here that people are gonna get something out of it. I want to pause it to use the restroom real quick. To be honest, this is an excuse to catch up with people too.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is different than other podcasts I've done because you and I have known each other for so long. So we're just getting into a conversation. I haven't seen you in a while either. Yeah,
and that's how I want to do these. It's like I look forward to this with you. I'm not doing anything that I don't look forward to. That was a big. December was really big for me. I landed a lot more of who I actually am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not playing small anymore for people to feel comfortable at all. And I really just asked myself, like, what do I want to spend my days doing? And am I still trying to play their game, which doesn't really exist anymore? And the answer is,
or am I trying to anticipate, their game without really even knowing what their game is?
Yeah, I call it trying to hit the target. I was talking to this young producer. He reached out to me, and he was like, "I want to do this movie. I have this access to investors." But I want to do it about this subject, and I'll leave the subject off the table because it's kind of irrelevant. But because you can fill in the blank is my point. Yeah. And I go, do you connect to that subject? Because although it's a popular topic in Hollywood, would you say that you personally relate to it? And he was like, and I'm not disparaging him. I get it.
Yeah.
I think this is common. And he's like, no, but like this sells. Mm-hmm. And I just shared with them, like, my experience is you then have to go develop, shoot, edit and distribute the movie on a solid schedule that's 2 years. In what world has something still been popular 2 years later? So it's like you're trying to hit a target. It's the same thing with like Netflix's algorithm. Yeah, they might have that today, but then you have to go develop it, write it, and then 2 years later at best, it's out. Is it the same demographic? Probably not. And so that's kind of what I've done for myself too. It's like, what do I actually want to do? And is there anybody actually stopping me, or am I telling myself stories to keep me safe and scared and beholden? And so that's where I'm at personally. And that's part of what this show's about. It's like, I'm just like, no, I want to do this. And I know people will get something out of it because they've already told me. I tell you, Adam, like, I did this podcast last year at the end, and 12 or so people reached out to me from all over the world and country. Like, dude, thank you. No one talks about this or shares like this. And I'm just like, okay, not that I'm the bee's knees, but maybe I have something that might help somebody else out there who's struggling. Because what I noticed is there's like the master class, but you and I know, especially being in this industry, the novice to somebody like Scorsese isn't like 5 levels. It's like 1,000,000 levels between them and Scorsese. So to get information from him in a masterclass setting is kind of funny to me, because I'm like, you can't touch him or Sorkin. And you shouldn't try. Like, they're not only older, have been doing this for a long time. What were you going to say? Jump in.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I was just repositioning myself.
Oh, yeah. And so that's kind of where I'm at. It's just like, when I looked into it, I didn't see a lot of people. How do I put this? I don't look around and see a lot of peers, like people who are putting out and as committed as me, except the people on this podcast. I consider you a peer, a guy who's really dedicated himself to a craft and is pursuant of it as well. Not just working on it in his private time, but risking yourself publicly for it. Yeah. And so, that's where I'm at.
Good.
Good. So, Sandy Marshall. You became a student, and then
Yeah.
And then either took over or started your own jingle. You want to walk me through that a little bit?
Sure. So Sandy Marshall, we're talking about a woman named Sandy Marshall, who is a very well-known acting coach here in Los Angeles. And I'm curious by nature, and I've always been curious. So I've tried everybody's different approach. And I kept hearing about this class, and that it involved doing a Meisner exercise called a repetition exercise, where basically you, off of the other person, you respond honestly about how they're affecting you. That honesty was what what hooked me into it. So I went to the class. There was a lot of people you recognized. It was a lot of working actors. And I just remember I watched it and then ran away for about 3 months because it terrified me, because you had to be honest. And at that point, I had studied a lot, but it was a lot of intellectual studying. And I'd done Strasberg. I did 5 years with a Strasberg type thing. And but what got me about
in LA or Canada?
No, in Canada, in Vancouver. It was great for what it was, and I'm very sensory, and it was a lot of valuable stuff. But for me, the difference for me between Canada and the States, Canada is much more of a socialistic country. And there is a much more, we all work together. We're not going to get through the winter if you're angry at your neighbor. I'll help Bob shovel his driveway, and he'll help me build the barn in the summertime. Or you go to a restaurant and you're like, no, there's no substitutions, because if I'm wasting 5 minutes with you and your substitutions, then everybody doesn't get to eat quickly. It's a little bit like that. But when I came to the States, and there was a lot of supporting players. But when I came to the States, and this is just individual for me and for anybody that it resonates with, but it's not the only path. It was mine and my upbringing and how I learned things and my own degree of, I just want to fit in and be like everyone else. And when I got here, the challenge was, no, I need to see you. I need to see what your honesty is, that my acting was a little bit superficial still. So anyway, met her, joined the class, scared the hell out of me because I was going to have to be honest, which I was terrified of being, because I thought everyone was going to, suddenly I was back in 7th grade and everybody was going to beat me up on the playground at recess for being honest. So started studying, really got a lot out of that. It was a great environment to, I just had a huge imagination and I was just crazy, loved playing characters, and she just gave me all kinds of freedom to do it. And then she wanted to step away for a little bit. She wasn't sure where she was at and wanted to step away. So I came in and started teaching. And then we did that for a while. Then I started doing my own thing, and then she kind of moved away from it. So now I'm kind of doing my own thing, and I've been doing it for about 5 years, going into my 6th year. And that's how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I ended up working. And that's how I ended up working for you.
That's right.
That's right. Which is awesome.
You had the best audition out of everybody. I mean, not just your part. Everybody who auditioned. It was, and that's saying something, because we had some motherfuckers on that in the best way. Some real forces.
Yeah, there was some real powerhouses. But that was Sandy. Audition. Sandy was instrumental. I've been fortunate enough to work with Larry Moss, who's incredible for his tutelage, and I work with a Shakespeare guy named Rob Clare, who used to work in the British system. That's been awesome, and that's kind of I need it. Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, because that always intimidated. Yeah, that always intimidated me because I don't understand things well by rote. I have to understand the why of it. So for somebody just reading me a line of Shakespeare and saying, well, this is what the line means, it doesn't work for me. I have to know why the words mean that. Like I have to understand the sentence structure of how the sentence structure ends up in that meaning, not just blah, 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 blah. And they're like, you don't have to know that. It just means I love you. And I'm like, but what are the words actually saying? Why does it mean I love you? Which is...
How fun.
It is fun, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to try to understand the why of something.
Yeah, the detective work around acting is my favorite.
Really?
Oh my God. Yeah, you know, Mark Pellegrino is one of my first teachers ever. And so that's how I knew him and knew he was. Yeah. So when I was obsessive at Playhouse West in North Hollywood, he was teaching the advanced, or one of the teachers of the advanced, I should say. And the way that school is set up is there's beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And any level you're at, you can audit the other classes for free of that level or below. Yeah. Well, as a beginner, there's nothing below you, right? So it's only beginning classes. But similar to you, I'm a rule breaker and also a hard worker. So I befriended Mark and then started sitting in on his advanced classes.
Good.
And that was quite an experience. Well, I just lost my train of thought. What you were talking about?
You were bringing up working with Mark Pellegrino and your approach to things and your curiosity. I think that's what you were saying. Shakespeare.
Oh, that's right. And okay. Yes, so Mark's a huge Shakespeare guy, as his wife Tracy, who's incredible as well. But he once said something that I'll never forget, which is, in the pursuit of your detective work for a part, nothing is off the table and nothing is bad. Because you would see people be like, no, this part has to be this way and this is how I prepare. And I just love that freedom he was expressing. Like, no, it's all good. He called it grist for the mill. And I bet he'd laugh if he heard that because he said that often. But so it just reminded me when you were talking, like, that's right. And the detective work is my favorite because it might not work for this part, but it might work for this other part down the line. And it's just super fascinating.
I think one of the things I love about actors is the desire. I won't say the fearlessness, because it can still be terrifying, but the acceptance and the desire to look in the ugly mirror, to look in the mirror and to accept stuff about ourselves that a lot of people would just happily get through life not looking at, because it's only by investigating that you are able to play other characters to show the world their humanity. You know, we all have murderers. We all have murderous thoughts. We all have terrible human thoughts. But humans need to see those stories as well. I think, I used to hate horror. I didn't understand horror movies. They really fuck me up. But
same.
It's a very cathartic experience for some people to go have those dark fantasies acted out in a safe way, because we all have those. We all have them. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I have had a similar experience with the horror genre. My buddy Jesse Shapiro is like a horror fanatic, and he was like, it's almost the cleanest genre because people pay the price and there's no sugarcoat. Like they die or they get tortured or they get, and he's like, it's ultimately about fables. And he's like, it's just a lot clearer line to track. And I never had taken that perspective.
But
I totally agree. Thank
not
God.
My fables.
Yeah. Thank God people are putting it down so they're not acting them out.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to move on to some of your work. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit, answer as little or as much as you want.
Okay. This is lightning. I feel like the lightning round is coming up.
Oh, no. We can talk as little or as... But, you might have been talked out of some stuff. So just say whatever.
Okay.
So I want to talk about The Little Things. That was Jared Leto, Denzel Washington, right? I saw that.
And Rami Malek.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I say something even though you were in the movie?
Yeah, you say whatever you want.
Yeah. I thought he was miscast, Rami Malek. Even though he's an incredible actor, if I recall, he's not the innocent. He doesn't have the instant innocent look that part required for me. And that was, it is so pretentious to be like, if I had an issue, but that stood out to me as a lesson to take away. Because sometimes you can't outact bad casting. And that was just a good lesson. I hear
what you're saying about the term miscast. I know when I read the script version I read anyway, the approach they were taking is that character was very much the innocent, and he was getting dragged down into Denzel Washington's world and the ego of Denzel Washington's world, and this character developing an ego when they're very, very naive and they're very law-abiding and loving, and they're such a do-gooder and want to do things right and by the book that they're getting blindsided, and you don't realize that Denzel's darkness and torture and stuff is corrupting this guy and giving him false confidence and all that stuff. That's how the script read. But I realized that for me anyway, when I look at somebody and say somebody was miscast, I'm like, well, there's a lot of decisions being made before that person walks on set. So if they have been miscast or the story has changed, there's been a lot of choices to make that change. It's not just on the actor. It's not, you couldn't pull it off.
I thought he did a great job.
They've changed the story. They wanted to go a different way with it, and this is how it all played out. But I was just, I mean,
Yeah.
I was just happy to be there, man. I was just happy to work with the director, and I really went into that. The weirdest thing was that I got there on set, and it was just going to be me, and it was going to be that long monologue, and it was going to be a tracking shot where the camera just went across. So there's no ability to cut. Like, once they go to action, you have to do the whole thing because it's all basically a oneer, and everybody's staring at you. Like, you just walked on set, you've been introduced to people, and then they're all just staring at you. And sorry about that. For people watching, like, it takes time to set things up and light things. So you're just standing there, and everybody is just staring at you. And it was one of those moments where I just thought I had to, and I worked on it ahead of time. I thought I just have to tweak this. So they're all staring at me, right? But I flipped it around, and I'm like, I'm the one who has to be staring at them. I worked with Larry Moss on it, and he said, remember that there was 6 murders that happened up until that point, I think. And he said, just remember the trickle effect of those 6 murders, the number of people that each one of those murders has affected. And every one of these detectives has that weight on them. It's not just 6 bodies. It's husbands and wives and children and aunts and uncles and relatives and funerals. And every unsolved murder of those 6 is a weight on everyone. And you are coming in to say, I'm going to help. So it made such a difference that and it was, it's a small scene, but I didn't want to mess it up. And,
yeah, of course.
But it helped from the preparation, that you're just like, oh God, everybody's going to staring and nothing's happening until we roll. But instead, that weight of these people are all trying to help, and they've all been suffering, and they're all desperately looking for somebody to say, we're going to come in and take it. And it was so liberating, because I just stood there. They could get ready to roll for 10 minutes. And all I kept doing was just looking around at everybody, making eye contact, instead of trying to hide until they called action. And really trying to take everybody in and just feeling like that. I get it.
I love that.
Yeah. So that was.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a lot of, and the other thing I learned on that I would share is that, the director was fantastic, and I talked to him a bit, but in those types of things, you're getting hired because of what you've done already. You're getting hired because of what you did in the audition. And when you walk on set, you're being asked to come in. They don't have to worry about you, and you're going to do your thing. You're not having to walk on set to then have a conversation with the director to prove your worth. Or hey, so I was wondering,
That's
and they're
right.
like, they're very gracious and all that stuff. But I realized when I walked on, I'm like, no, they're hiring me to do this thing. But it was so much fun. It was. Everybody's telling the story. The story. We picked a tie to tell a story. The knot of the tie told a story. Which hand was going to be in my pocket or not be in a pocket told a story, to show the difference between these more blue-collar detectives and this arrogant or confident FBI person coming in with the new technology at the end, and what his body language would be that would be different than the slumped detective standing in the corner, and the sharpness and clarity of their dialogue and approach versus the more laid-back, laconic, maybe burnt-out detective. Now, even my role in the movie, there's a bit of hubris to that, because we never know if the guy got caught. We never know if this new approach did solve anything. But anyway, that was my experience on that. And that was,
Oh, thank you. That's amazing. And
yeah.
I enjoyed the film, to be clear, and Rami's acting is amazing, I think, in general. But again, I got the exact same interpretation that you did. And that's even furthers my point. Like Ethan Hawke in Training Day, you look at him and he's innocent.
Yeah.
And so Rami appears too smart instantly to me. This is all me, right? So that was I was like, I needed someone a little more obviously doe-eyed.
Yeah, but it's tough, because you have to be doe-eyed and yet the top of your class. Like,
yeah, that's
you
true.
have to be,
You're
you have
right,
to be
'cause he's
super
the
smart, but
he's the man.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really enjoyed. I love detective films. There,
Mm,
man. So that was, and I love that whole cast. So it was
yeah.
absolutely amazing to see you in that, and you
I
definitely
felt it. I felt the
deserved.
same way.
Yeah, you deserved every second of screen
No,
time
thanks,
you
man.
got because you're
Thanks,
fucking
man.
awesome.
I
So that's
appreciate
the
it.
little things.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about? You did several episodes of Bosch.
Yeah.
Was that like you got hired for one, they gave you more, or tell
Uh,
me a little bit about that process? Because I love that
the
show too.
Yeah, I think I'd gone on in it a couple of times in previous seasons. We knew it was going to be a recurring. We knew it was going to be an FBI guy. I went in, I did it. I think I was sick at the time, which was great because it was just everything was like I got nothing. So I'm just gonna like connect. And it felt good,
Yeah.
but I was auditioning for two different parts. So I know what happened. I went and I read. They brought me back and they had me read for another role that turned out to be the cop that was the killer or the dirty cop or something.
Mm-hmm.
I was the FBI cocky, asshole cop, and then there was another cop that was a fuck up. And I didn't know which one. And then I found out I wanted the one I got, and I found out I got that. And that was, dude, the environment of that show was amazing. And then I'll stop talking about it. Lance Hendrick, that I got to work with a lot.
I love that.
I
Please.
totally, I shouldn't have done it, but I totally fanboyed on him the first day because the John Wick films and all that stuff. Titus ran a great set, really nice, very encouraging, really warm. But this was my takeaway from the show. Extraordinary experience. What I love that they did is whenever they needed background as cops or SWAT teams or anything like that, I love that they did this. They hired off-duty cops and SWAT team guys.
Wow.
One, for their benefit, they wanted it to look authentic. But the other reason why they did it is to help these guys supplement their income. Because all the law enforcement, they're putting their own money into their gear because the boots that the government pays for and that the state pays for, a lot of the gear that they just have to supply on their own or they'll supply isn't very good gear. So cops are paying for their own boots and this and that and the other thing. So there was all these amazing young guys there with families and stuff like that. And on their off hours, they would come work on Bosch and get an extra little bit of income. And I love that. Nothing against background performers that are making their living doing this. But I just thought that was such a, I just thought that was such a classy, awesome thing. And I loved meeting all of them. One of them gave me a little SWAT patch that I have to this day when we finished working together. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's just funny. It occurred to me. I've brought it. It's so weird. You don't think about somebody forever, but Small World Connection. If you ever saw the show Lost, I don't know if you're familiar, but they had two massive characters on the show, and Titus was one, and Mark Pellegrino was the other.
Oh no
and they
shit!
Were Small World on-screen adversaries for 2 seasons.
See,
but it's just funny
small
to me.
World, Sean.
It's several degrees of separation.
We're all connected.
So,
we're all connected.
Was it 1 season or 3 seasons? How does that go?
It was one. I knew I was going to be there for 1 season, and it was. And then there
9
were very,
episodes, right?
I forget. I think it was 6, but then on IMDb, oftentimes they'll count when you were in the previously on. But it was just supposed to be that season, and then it was very nice, and it felt very good for my actor ego and stuff that in the final season, they brought me back, and I got to do a couple episodes, finishing out kind of a long-term story with Lance's character. And I think the final episode I got to do, I have never dropped the F-bomb so many times in my life. I had one speech where I'm screaming into a phone and it was just F this and F that. And I love that word. It's a great word. Yeah.
And so you got to work with Lance Reddick. and
Yes.
you're fanboying. So you're familiar with The Wire, I assume.
I was familiar with The Wire. I was familiar with the John Wick movies, and he's a super nice guy. So yeah, I realized on the first day.
Actor too.
Yeah, in retrospect, I would have kept it to myself, but in that moment, I fanboyed. Yeah.
Hey, it happens to the best.
It happens. Yeah.
All right, so that's Bosch. Let's talk a little bit about this indie video game, God of War.
I hear it's doing. I hear it's slow. It's slowly finding an audience. I hear it's starting to do pretty.
Yeah. What's I'm always having to be like, no, God of War.
What? Yeah.
So I'm playing it now. I must say, I've been onto this type of storytelling personally for a long time. Like, I enjoy it, but the storytelling, I've never preferred the cutscenes to something before, such as this. Like, I look forward to the cutscenes. I watch them all. As much or as little as you want to talk about, because you've been in. I'm not super dialed in on the God of War history. The two. Have there just been two? Okay.
No, I think. I think this is in the series. Don't quote me, but I believe it's the fourth and the fifth in the series. So there's been three.
So it's been
three
around.
Previously. Yeah. Oh, it's been the guys on like Cory Barlog and the guys at Sony Santa Monica have been working this thing for 15 years or more. This particular series.
Wow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I did God of War and God of War Ragnarok.
Which is the current one, the one that's
God of War
masterpiece.
Yeah, God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok is the ones I've worked on. Yeah.
So, tell me about the booking, because, like, for example, I know one of my buddy booked Star Trek. He had no idea what he was auditioning for. It was Secret Sides. Was there a similar vibe to this, or did you know? You're with a voiceover agency.
Yeah.
Like, was this run of the mill or was this heightened? You know what I mean?
No, I think it was run of the mill for me, probably because I don't remember if they were keeping it secret what the game was or not. I just know that I'm not a gamer. So even if they told me what it was, I wouldn't, it didn't, I don't think it dawned on me one way or the other because I wouldn't have known what the hell I was auditioning for anyway. Yeah. But I knew I was auditioning for a weapons maker who was a germaphobe. And who was a dwarf, who was going to be tiny. And I knew that when I went in and read, it was at Sony Santa Monica Studios in this just gigantic room. It wasn't even a volume room. I think it was just a big, huge, empty room at that point. And they had all these props there, and they just said, go and do the dialogue while you're making stuff. So I was kind of doing that. But what I got told was you booked the part when in the middle of my audition, there was a group of executives from Sony Japan, I believe, getting a tour. And in the corner, way in the corner, they came through the door in the middle of my audition on the other side of this gigantic room, because we're kind of sitting there in the middle of a big empty in our little thing. And they walked in and they're just standing there staring, and I think somebody has a camera. And they said, you booked the part because you incorporated it into the audition. So I kind of looked over, and my character's supposed to be a bit paranoid and germophobia and nervous about anything. And I just remember like getting uncomfortable that they were there, and kind of shying away, like maybe the wind was blowing and there might be germs on them. And then I kept looking back at the producers, and I think I remember just being like, oh, all right, okay, well, and kind of continuing on, but now throwing the dialogue to my weapons to see if they were still there or not. And they said, that's when we realized it was really interesting, because they said, I wasn't changing anything. I wasn't doing anything different than I'd prepared to do. But they said, for us, you booked it because the very fact that you incorporated them the way you did, and it was funny and stuck with the character, let us know that you knew who the character was. Now, I'm
I
sure that's not
love
the only
that.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I think
All
they
the
must have been.
others had to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure
They all.
I'm sure they were enjoying what I was doing, and I'd done my
Mhm.
homework, and they happened to think the way I was doing it was in line with what they wanted. But they said, "Yeah, it clinched the deal when you suddenly made it really funny that the tour interrupted your audition right in the middle of it, and you went with it instead of it throwing you off and being like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know what to do now." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
But
know,
so
it's
that was booking
fascinating.
God of War.
My buddy, he's in Modern Warfare or Call of Duty, one of these other big games,
Huge, yeah.
and he's ironically the gunsmith and that. And I was talking to him about it, and he's like, Sean, do you know what the producers told me? That most actors show up unprepared. Like like they still have the sides and they don't take it serious. And he's like, I'm sure I booked this because I showed up like it was a series regular spot. And I assume you did as well. Like you didn't take it as a slouch.
No, and a lot of it is understanding, when people are auditioning and all that stuff, you really have to understand what you're going in for. Like, if you're going in on comedy or drama and what the tone of it is and all that, because they expect you to know that stuff. Like, you can't go in for Grey's Anatomy and treat it like it's, I don't know, treat it like it's Breaking Bad or something. There's a tone to this. And with video games, historically, they don't use actors. They would have voiceover people and then physical actors that would do the physicality. So their history in that world isn't the peculiarities of actors. So I knew going into it that, not being off book doesn't compute in their heads. They don't, their history isn't, well, they're just giving me the flavor and they'll get it eventually. They're like, no, they need to see it because that's the work level they're used to. At least that was my approach. So no, when I went in, I was off book and all that stuff because I thought they're not going to, they need to see a finished product. And there's also no time. There's no rehearsal in this world or anything. And they're not used to actors. And, they're doing, okay, you're going to do the voiceover work and you're going to do the physical work. That's what they were hiring. They're not saying, you're going to come in and give us all of your emotions and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating too because you're a tall, handsome man, and Sindri's like a thin, sickly almost dwarf with a lighter voice. And I mean, you play him beautifully. I was showing Jordan Wisely you the other day. He was over at the house and I was like, dude, that's Adam Harrington. And he's like, no way. So I'm like, listen. And he's like, oh my God, So it's really amazing.
Well,
man. It's real. Is it fun to do the physicality with the rest of the actors?
I first of all, I know you're just into the game, but I will say just fucking wait.
Just wait. Yeah. I just got to the part, without spoiling too much, where you tell Atreus about your brother's 3/4 souls.
Yes.
And I was like, ooh, something's coming from that.
Yeah. Ragnarok is coming. But to your point, I think it's been between the first game and the second one, it's been such an incredible experience because who you think Sindri is in the first game and only that, and the way I had prepped that never got seen, and then the story arc for Ragnarok, I have never, ever been able to play such a massive arc in a character that I would never ever get cast for in real life. To play what appears to be a germophobic comedian, just wonderful and giving dwarf with the difference in the posture and the voice and everything, and to be able to work on all of that. And then, as you will see, a character arc where I won't give everything away, but it was such a pleasure to have such a great character journey that I got to work in everything: physicality, voice, emotional context, all of it, into the gamut of emotions. I would never say never, but I've never been given that opportunity for real life casting. And the fact that, this 6'2" surfer dude guy gets to play this diminutive dwarf artisan weapons maker and go through this art was amazing. And I got to bring in everything I've ever learned. I got to bring in the shit, because it's a very Shakespearean character. He's the fool or the idiot, the fool or the clown, and the roles that they play, but it shifts. And I'm so grateful for the experience, because I just have never had one like it. I don't know that I will again. And it was so nice to just, there's more, there might be more to come, who knows, but to have that full an arc and to explore a whole bunch of stuff was just, I will treasure this experience till the day I die. And the team that on these games, the animators that worked on Sindri, the specificity that they were to translate the dots on my face and make sure that all the emotions get conveyed, and the theme that Bear McCreary came up for me and Brock, and the variations on that was able to tell Sindri's story emotionally. Like it was just so amazing and such a wonderful feeling to be able to collaborate with these incredible people on this. I really can't say enough about it, because it really did blow my mind, coming from a world where I had absolutely no idea about the gaming world and the community and what it did. And, it was video games, and I can't sit on a couch that long, but it was amazing. It's a beautiful story. I do think, whether it gets Game of the Year awards, more, all that stuff, it is an incredible story. It's an absolutely incredible story, and I love the themes in it. So that's me.
In some ways, thank you for sharing. In some ways, it's one of the most incredible stories ever told.
I'm biased,
breadth of subject.
Yeah. And
I'm being objective. It's so long. Someone had to write that.
Yeah, but just wait. The themes it talks about, apart from being a video game, but just in life, the themes it talks about and all that stuff, and the fun of it, and
it's funny. My buddy, he's played them all, and he was telling me, without judgment, he's like, dude, like God of War has evolved, like matured.
Yeah.
He's like, when it first started, it was kind of bro-y, like it was a little piggish, He's like, you could literally like have sex with, he's like, there is that time in video game. That's not just to God of War, that's many popular games. But like the themes, I can tell there's environmentalism, there's deep themes that are just, and it's not preachy, it's beautiful. And I think that's an artistic gift, to be able to write something that's important, but I don't feel like I'm being preached to. And so full kudos to you and the team there. I know it was
it was an amazing
work. I can't even imagine.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that gave, works very hard for a long time on that. And they're all extraordinary. I was so happy to be a part of it.
Love that. So let's talk about the Stalking Fields, which is a movie we did together. Yeah. And just tell me similarly, like, what was your perspective or experience on that? And we'll start there.
So I auditioned for this movie called The Stalking Fields with this guy named Sean, who was doing it, who I'd met, and I'd seen his acting. He was good. He had chops. You brought me in for the role of, quote unquote top. And you liked what I did. And then we went on this wild adventure. Also from our class is the guy who plays my son, Jake.
Jake Davidson.
Jake Davidson. And it was me and Michael and Jake shared a house in some small town in California. And it felt like going to camp. Because it was it did feel like going to camp. I'm watching Yellowstone now, and it reminds me of when they all go out to bring all the cattle, and they're sleeping in tents and just going along with everything. That's what it felt like. I felt like a troupe, an acting troupe. But it was I liked it because I got to explore a character that is from a world that I just never knew. And Rick, the director, was so helpful because he'd lived this world with, again, movement and body language and the look. And my funny anecdote from it was, I said to you, how are we going to do these fight scenes? Because I'm tall and skinny, and you're built like a brick shithouse. And I think
Yeah,
you said
no shit.
you were trying to lose a bit of weight, and I was trying to pack on as much as I could. So I think I put on 20 pounds. When we started shooting, I was 20 pounds heavier, and then I lost it quickly over the shoot. But I had put on 20 pounds, and I think you'd said you'd taken a chunk off just to try to, make it a little more
down 25 pounds or so.
Yeah. And I remember that was I was like, technically, how are we going to make this? And of course, then the choreography we came up with worked, but I thought the finished product worked. But I remember I'm like, I am going to look like a stick man trying to throw punches at you.
Oh my God, you look great, bro. I actually,
thanks.
People can't tell, but I actually elbowed you in the face during that stunt sequence, one of the takes, and you took it so in stride, I remember hitting you.
I remember I screwed up my knee. I got bronchitis out of when we were shooting in the rain and the snow. I got bronchitis from that, as everybody did. I think I was sick. Everybody was sick, but that was a ton of fun. I don't think I remember you hitting, you elbowed me in the face, but earlier in my career, I think I took it in stride because I remember working on something in Vancouver and I got really heavily elbowed in the throat and knocked back over a table. And that hurt. And the guy was,
oh my God,
he was high as a kite at the time. That's what I found out afterwards. So I think you grazing me in the face with your elbow was, you were really good.
Man, I gotta commend you. Yeah, I mean, because you were, it feeds each other. People don't understand.
Yeah, and I'm like, let's not, make anyone listening think I got punched in the face. You grazed me with your elbow, I think, against my nose ever so slightly. You did not Harrison Ford me or something like that. You're better. You're a better fighter than that.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's funny, Kyle told me I did a good job protecting the actors from what was going on behind closed doors. And that was one of the craziest absolute days of my life on set. So just to contextualize for anybody listening, we were shooting the final fight scene of the movie. It happened to rain, and not just rain, but pour and sleet and hail.
Yeah.
It was about 40 degrees. Adam and I are in t-shirts essentially. And our first AD, Josh, peeled his jacket off to be in a t-shirt with us, solidarity. But earlier in that day, I had hurt myself with a gun accident. The Video Village was sinking. Jordan, who was running the show with me, is in New York because his business was at stake over there, so he had to leave for 5 days. Our second AC was injured and in the hospital, so we're a person down on our camera crew. And Video Village is sinking, right? Everybody heard that. It's $150,000 worth of equipment just getting inch by inch because it's torrential downpour the whole time. And we got lucky in that way because it's the final fight scene of the movie, and paying for rain's very expensive, and we got it. But then we had. But as I remember, there was.
Yeah, but as I remember, there was no. It wasn't supposed to be like, it wasn't supposed to be some ominous, and then the storm clouds move in and it starts raining. That wasn't scripted. It's just we suddenly had to incorporate it. So I remember everybody moving a lot of snow out of the way and then hoping it melted. And then you guys just saying, okay, it's the final fight scene. We'll write it into the script. The storm clouds come in and we have no choice.
Yeah. And so I remember, in the shot makes the movie, thank God, but you put your face in the fucking frozen mud for that.
Yeah.
And, Yeah, that scene was awesome because Rick, he was really like allowing me to pay attention to the father-son dynamic that was running underneath our relationship. So I'll never forget that day. That's for sure. I'll just remember like Tori, one of our other producers, running to where we were, holding the phone, and it's Jordan on speakerphone, and he's just like, "What the fuck's going on?" And I'm like, I can't even. What?
I remember also we had spent hours choreographing the fight. And then when we got to set, realizing none of it was going to work because of the rain, and suddenly it became too risky, and it just I think it kind of worked because it ended up just being this really raw brawl. Yeah. Very simple, raw brawl.
Well, our stunt coordinator, I don't know if you knew this or recalled, but he got injured on like day 1 or 2 of Tahoe. And so we had to move him out of the main house and into his own hotel. He had pulled his back, and if you've ever done that, it's serious. And so he couldn't, it was all divine timing, because then it was left to me, you, Rick, Jordan, and Nick to figure out, like, how do we choreograph a fight scene? Yeah. And so we were doing that. We worked on it because he wasn't there. And then he showed up that day when we needed him, and he put together a few pieces for us, and luckily we were able to just pick it up and employ it right away. But like, if you recall, we were learning it in the barn next to that like jet fighter heater that shot out literal flame. Because we were in a logging cabin with no power. Like, everything on the property had been hand built by the owner. And it was a crazy experience, but man, does it show up on camera. And now it's out. And that's been a fun, exciting experience. Yeah. I hope you're proud of your performance. I think you're
very proud of it. Thank you. I'm very happy that everybody is getting to see what you do and what you're capable of and everything. Because I think you're just solid. You're just so solid.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I'm excited for people to see it. It's been interesting, I can tell, because I'm doing press for it and stuff now, which is my first go around of doing media, doing interviews with strangers all across the country via Zoom. And I'll be like, yeah, we made that for $100,000. And I can tell instantly if someone knows what they're doing or not, because can you believe we made that for $100,000? Most people cannot fathom that. And so even, you can go make a movie for that, but you might not get everything. You might not get the acting, but you got the cool action. You might get the acting, but not the cool action, or the light, or the writing, and we're able to accomplish.
And I will also add to it. Yeah, I will also say $100,000 where you put the cast and the crew up in nice lodging, and you gave them 3 squares a day that were nice and not just bags of Doritos and cans of Pepsi or Coke or something like that. Like, you made it work because you made it. Like, I remember we would all get picked up and go over for dinner at the big house with everybody. And it was just like a fun, it was just not a party necessarily, but it was just a really fun gathering, like a family. And I think that was a part of how you make something cheap work so well, is you just kind of make it, like I said, it was camp. We're all going up into the hills to a repertory theater for the summertime, and we're all there together. And that was part of it, is, people were bringing stuff in and people were cooking and doing and all that, but it just became a big family. And I think that works in those environments where it's not like, well, you got to, it has to be $1 million and I get my trailer and my personal food and all that stuff. Yeah,
I want, my goal as a producer director now is to incorporate both. I want that budget, and I want it to feel like this, because my honest assessment is you can feel the love come through in your movie if what's going on set is positive and warm and there's love. I don't mean it's jokey. You can still be deadly serious about your stuff, but the energy involved, the more I do this, the more movies I make, the more important it is because I see it show up in the final product. People have told me with unsolicited, you guys had a good time making this movie. I can tell. And I'm like, whoa, you just watched it and you can feel that. So, here's my thing, Adam. I realize we spend so much more time making the picture than we do watching and celebrating it. And so let's refocus on the making of it and make sure because what's funny is I'll pitch things that are not Hollywood standards. Like, let's have a 3-day work week or 4-day work week. And people will be like, well, every producer with 100% of them have said, what about your rentals? And I'm like, what about my artists? Like, what about that actually? And it's just interesting. And that's where I'm at. In this last movie I produced, we did 2 to 4 day work weeks. We did 12-hour days max, including lunch. And people might be like, 12 hours? That's still a light day for most crews, actually.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? We made the movie. And there are all these ancillary benefits I hadn't considered before because I'm not in the money-making business. I'm an artist trying to make the best story possible.
Yeah.
So I'm putting on those glasses for a second. When you're doing a 5 or 6 day run, which, anybody who's been around a long time has probably done at some point where they work their stocking fields is like that. You work 5-6 days hard. You have 1 or 2 days off. Well, I noticed you don't want to fucking look at your sides or your work because you're burnt out. But the benefit when you have time off is that the material soaks in, relaxed and deeper. And all of a sudden you're getting fresh ideas and more succinct ways of approaching the material for the next week because you have the space to let it go and come back to it. And so I'm not saying it works for every picture, but that's how I'm operating because also my life's more important than a fucking movie. And if I do, even though movies are my church, like you referred to nature earlier, I take it that serious, but it's a haha at the end of the day. So if I do my job right, which is to hire correctly as a producer or director, then I already know the talent portion, the result portion is probably going to be taken care of. Because I did my job. I hired Nick Acosta, I hired Adam J. Harrington to act. So I already know it's going to be great. So I don't have to worry so much about the result. So what can I take care of? Well, it's the actual filming of it, which is going to be a year or 2. And so that perspective has really freed me in a lot of ways too. And that started on the stocking fields because I learned a lot of hard lessons on that one.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got for today. We've been going almost 2 hours, which is awesome.
No, it was amazing. It was easy.
I appreciate your time.
It was an easy 2 hours. Same,
Sean.
Time? Thank you. I did. I always have a great time with you.
Oh, good, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
Your continued support of me. You've always been a champion of me, and that doesn't go unnoticed or underappreciated. So I just wanted to say that here again. And I love
Anytime, anywhere. Love you, Sean. Anytime, anywhere. Anytime, anywhere, man.
Right on.
All right.
Well, I'm going to stop the record, and then we'll say our goodbyes.